Okay, imagine this. A family, right? Celebrating a birthday, lots of laughter, good times. And then just boomed like that. In an instant, it turns into this fatal shooting. But what if? What if that wasn't even the whole story? What if that violence, horrific as it was actually just the tip of the iceberg, part of something much bigger, more hidden, and frankly, terrifying? So, in this deep dive, we're digging into a really, really shocking case. Happened in South Korea. Starts with a family shooting in Incheon, but that quickly spirals into finding this cache, a dangerous stash of homemade explosives and weapons. Our info, it's coming straight from the police reports. We've got the timeline, the chilling facts. So our mission today is basically to walk you through exactly what happened, step by step, from that awful incident to these really quite hair-raising discoveries later on, and try to get our heads around what it all means. This incredibly dangerous situation. We'll look at what they found, maybe how it was made, and honestly, why it matters to you, how easily these things were put together. Okay, so let's get into it. It starts where? An apartment.
Yeah, an apartment in Sungdo-dong, Yeonsugu. That's in Incheon. It's a birthday party for a 63-year-old man. The reports call him A.
Okay, A. And his son, B, he's hosting.
Right, B is in his 30s. He's the host. His wife's there. Their 2 grandkids. Other friends or acquaintances, too.
So a proper family gathering. Sounds completely normal.
Totally normal on the surface, but then around 9:31 p.m., this was July 20th, that normality just shatters. A, the father, apparently leaves the apartment, says he's just popping out to the convenience store.
Okay. Fairly ordinary excuse.
Right. But he comes back just a short time later, and then, well, he opens fire on his own son, B, with a homemade gun.
Wow. Just turns around and shoots his son.
Exactly. And, the weapon itself is significant right from the start. It hints that this wasn't just spontaneous. There was some darker preparation involved.
Start picture that scene. And the weapon, you said homemade. What was it like?
The description is iron pipe-shaped. So pretty crude looking, you'd imagine.
But it worked.
Oh, it worked all right. Fired what they called, basically buckshot.
Buckshot, so multiple pellets.
Yeah, like a shotgun effect. Lots of small iron pellets firing at once. Very dangerous.
And B as in the son.
He was found collapsed. They rushed him to the hospital, but he went into cardiac arrest, didn't make it.
Oh, that's awful. Just awful. And A, the father?
He just fled, ran from the scene immediately after the shooting.
So then it's a manhunt situation.
Absolutely. A massive manhunt kicks off. Police moved incredibly fast. They actually caught him pretty quickly. Early the next morning, July 21st, around 20 past midnight.
Where did they find him? Still in Incheon?
No, they tracked him to Seoshogu in Seoul, so he'd traveled a bit.
Okay, and arrested him.
Arrested and charged straight away with murder.
So, okay, a terrible family tragedy. Father shoots son.
Yeah.
Seems contained in a horrible way.
That's what you'd think, right? But the police investigation, well, it was just getting started, and it quickly uncovered something far, far more sinister.
Right, because just when they think they're dealing with this single awful event, A starts talking during the interrogation.
Exactly. He reveals something that just completely changes the game, turns the whole case on its head.
Don't tell me.
He drops this bombshell, admits he'd installed explosives at his own home.
Explosives, plural, not just the gun.
Explosives, plural. And crucially, this wasn't the apartment where the party and the shooting happened.
A different place entirely.
Yeah, totally different residence. This one was in Singmundong, Dobonggu, up in Seoul.
Wow. Okay, so what did the police do then? This changes everything.
Their response was immediate.
Yeah.
And really decisive. They had to be. They evacuated the whole building, 105 residents clear out for safe
Those people, okay.
And then they deployed the police special forces, the bomb squad guys, essentially, to search A's property there.
And they found?
They found them. A total of 15 homemade explosives.
15 homemade bombs.
Ah.
What were they like?
Right.
Sophisticated?
Not sophisticated in a military sense, no. Which is almost more chilling, They were made from just everyday stuff. Things like peat bottles, detergent containers, even milk cartons.
Like stuff you'd have under your sink.
Pretty much. Filled with thinner, the solvent. Highly flammable. And connected to detonators. Ready to go.
That's terrifying. Just cobbled together from household items.
It is. And here's the really alarming part. The bit that gives you chills. These things had timers.
Timers? Set for when?
Set to detonate at 12 p.m. noon on July 21st.
The very day they found them.
The exact day. They were literally hours away from going off. Maybe less, depending on when they disarmed them.
My God. So close.
Police confirmed it. There was a real risk of explosion. They got there just in time.
So if we just connect the dots here, this goes way beyond the family shooting.
Oh, absolutely. Finding 15 timed bombs in an apartment building. I mean, think about the scale of that potential disaster.
That entire building.
Right. How close they came to something much, much bigger. It wasn't just, a tragic domestic dispute that ended violently. It was clearly an intricate, pre-planned, terror plot, really.
Waiting to
The
happen.
level of planning, it's just staggering. And it didn't stop with the explosives, did it? What else did they find?
No, it didn't. The investigation kept digging deeper. Back to A's vehicle.
The one he used to flee, presumably.
Presumably, in the passenger seat and the trunk, they didn't just find the 2 homemade firearms he apparently used in the shooting.
There was more.
There was way more. An astonishing 9 additional gun barrels. Just sitting there.
Barrels, like ready to be assembled into more guns?
That's the implication. And then back at his place in Sangmuntong, where the bombs were, they also found 5 or 6 more metal pipes.
Raw materials.
Exactly. Likely raw materials for making even more weapons.
So he wasn't just making 1 or 2 guns for this awful act against his son. He was basically running a small, hidden weapons factory. That's certainly what it looks like. Police believe he fabricated the firearms himself, the barrels, the handles, the whole assembly.
Wow, and the ammo.
They think he bought the ammunition separately. That's still under investigation, the specifics of how he got all these materials.
The pipes, the thinner, the ammo.
Right. How he acquired it all. But it points to this really methodical, deep dive into actually making these dangerous things, using stuff that's surprisingly easy to get hold of.
So, legally speaking, what's he facing now? It must be a mountain of charges.
Oh, absolutely. Very serious charges. Obviously, murder from the shooting of his son, but also violation of the Act on the safety management of firearms, swords, explosives, etc.
Because of all the homemade stuff.
Exactly. The homemade guns, the 9 extra barrels, and of course the 15 homemade explosives. It's incredibly serious.
Yeah, no kidding. And
Yeah.
the big question, I guess, the why. Did the report say anything about motive?
The source material we have, the police reports, they focus on the what and the how, the facts of the crime and the discovery. They don't really delve into A's specific motive for any of it, the shooting or the bombs.
So we don't know why he targeted his son or why he planned this larger potential attack.
Not from these initial reports, no. But it raises that huge question, doesn't it? While the what and how are becoming clear about the shooting, the homemade arsenal, the timers, the why, behind such extensive, dangerous preparation, that's still a major area for investigation. What pushes someone not just to violence, but to this scale of planned destruction, extending way beyond just a personal conflict?
Okay, so let's just recap what we've looked at in this deep dive. It's a really harrowing sequence, isn't it? Started with a family tragedy, a shooting at a birthday party, but that just unexpectedly peeled back the layers on this meticulously planned, highly dangerous operation.
Yeah, an arsenal of homemade bombs and guns, found just hours before those explosives were set to detonate.
It's just a stark reminder, really, how quickly something that looks isolated can actually reveal a much larger, much more chilling plot underneath.
Absolutely. And it really underscored how vital that swift police action was. Finding him, the interrogation, finding the bombs. It prevented what could have been a truly catastrophic event for so many people in that building.
And as we kind of wrap up here, it does leave you thinking, doesn't it? Beyond the awful tragedy for that family. What is it in society, or, what allows an individual to get the knowledge, the skills, and just the readily available materials to build such complex, destructive things? Homemade guns, timed explosives.
From everyday items.
Right. And what does that sheer accessibility mean for us? For the challenge of spotting and stopping these kinds of threats, especially when the danger might be hidden in plain sight, in someone's home, made from stuff we all have. It's a really sobering thought.
Okay, imagine this. A country where, for decades, maybe even generations, putting your money into property, into real estate, was just the thing to do. It's almost part of the culture, right?
Absolutely. Bricks and mortar is the foundation of wealth.
Exactly. Now, picture that whole idea getting turned on its head almost, overnight.
A major shift.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at something pretty unprecedented happening in South Korea. We're talking about how people there are choosing to build wealth.
And the big headline.
For the first time in, get this, 25 years, stocks are now more popular than real estate.
25 years. That's significant.
It really is. We're digging into a survey from Gallup Korea. It just came out July 20th, 2025. It explores what they call favorable wealth building methods.
Right.
So our mission today is to unpack what this huge shift really means, look at the actual numbers, and think about the wider implications, for understanding investment trends, economic behavior, maybe even beyond Korea.
Definitely. So where do we start? The headline finding.
Yeah, let's hit that first. The big reveal. 1 in 3 Koreans, that's about 31%, now see stocks as the best way to grow their wealth.
1 in 3. Wow.
And like we said, historically huge because it's the first time since Gallup started asking this specific question back in 2000 that stocks have actually beaten real estate.
It's genuinely fascinating. Not just that it changed, but like the speed of it, the scale of it, especially in a market that's always been so conservative about real estate.
Yeah, very tied to property.
This isn't just a little nudge upwards for stocks. It's just something more fundamental is changing in how people there view risk and reward.
Absolutely. Let's get into the weeds a bit, the raw numbers. This Gallup Korea survey, done mid-July 2025, 1,000 adults across the country.
Okay.
So when asked their top pick for building wealth, stocks, 31%.
Right at the top.
Real estate, second place now at 23%.
Quite a gap already.
Then you've got savings or bank deposits at 20%, virtual assets, think Bitcoin, and similar, they're at 9%.
Interesting to see crypto making a showing like that.
Yeah, definitely. Then it drops off. Funds at 2%, gold also 2%, and bonds way down at just 1%.
So stocks aren't just slightly ahead. They have a clear, solid lead over everything else.
Exactly. That 8 percentage point lead over real estate isn't small. It's not margin of error stuff.
No, it's a definite signal. Investor priorities seem to be really shifting towards the capital markets. It's such a stark contrast to what we've seen historically there.
But here's where it gets really interesting, I think. When you compare it to just 2 years ago.
Okay, the trend over time.
Right. Let's look at Gallup's survey from July 2023. Back then, stocks were only preferred by 14%.
14%.
Now 31%. That's a jump of 17 percentage points. Massive.
A huge increase in just 24 months.
And look at virtual assets, too. They went from just 2% preference in 2023 up to 9% now.
So also a significant rise, more than quadrupled.
Now, flip side, real estate. 2 years ago, it was the clear favorite at 39%.
39, okay, dominant.
Today,
Yeah.
just 23%. That's a drop of 16 percentage points, almost mirroring the rise in stock.
Wow, that's a dramatic fall.
And even within real estate, the preference for apartments or houses specifically fell from 21% down to 14%.
Okay.
And land, or other types of property, that dropped even more by 9 percentage points. It's now sitting at only 9% preference.
So if you connect that to the bigger picture, it just shows incredible fluidity in investor sentiment.
Yeah, fluid is a good word.
For something that seemed so, deeply rooted, almost unshakable just 2 years back. This is less like a gentle turn and more like a complete U-turn at high speed. It really makes you wonder, is it about super compelling new opportunities in stocks, or is it a serious loss of faith in real estate as the go-to asset? Or maybe both.
Good question. So who exactly is driving this? Is it everyone or specific groups?
Well, the survey gives us age breakdowns, and it's pretty striking. Stocks are actually the top pick across all age groups, except for those 70 and older.
Really? Across the board like that?
Yeah, almost. It's particularly strong in the middle ages. Folks in their 40s, 41% prefer stocks. In their 50s, it's even higher, 42%.
Wow, okay. What about younger people?
Still strong. For the 20s, so that's 18 to 29-year-olds, stocks lead with 30%. Real estate is second for them at 24%.
Okay.
But here's something interesting for that group. Virtual assets are at 16%. That's way higher than any other age group.
Ah, okay. So the younger cohort is leaning into crypto more, relatively speaking.
Exactly. And then for the 30s, it's actually really close. Stocks are at 36%, and real estate is right behind at 35%.
Super tight race there.
Very tight. But stocks still just edge it out. So yeah, it really shows this trend isn't just one group. It's pretty widespread among younger and middle-aged Koreans.
That universality is quite something.
It is. And while stocks are dominant overall, that 16% for virtual assets among the 20-somethings, that tells a story too.
Yeah, what do you make of that?
Well, it suggests maybe a distinct generational comfort level with these newer, maybe riskier asset classes, things older generations might be a bit more hesitant about.
Right, so it's not just a market shift. It's maybe reflecting different mindsets evolving across generations too.
I think that's definitely part of it.
So the big question then is, why? Why this massive shift right now?
Gallup Korea offers their own take on it in their analysis.
What do they say?
They point to a few key things. One, a sort of relaxation of household assets being so heavily concentrated in real estate, people diversifying maybe.
Okay, less all eggs in one basket.
Exactly. Second, they talk about an activation of the capital market.
Activation.
Yeah.
What does that mean in practice?
Well, it implies things like maybe easier access, lower barriers to entry, perhaps better performance or perceived performance in the stock market recently, making it more attractive. And the third point they make is pretty direct. Alignment with the current government's economic policy. They specifically mention a policy direction that favors stocks instead of real estate.
Ah, okay, so an explicit government nudge, or maybe more than a nudge.
It seems so. And that raises a really interesting point about how policy, market behavior, and just public feeling,
Yeah.
how they all interact.
Yeah, that interplay.
When the government signals a preferred direction and the market perhaps starts showing returns in that direction, it can create this kind of self-reinforcing loop, right? It sort of legitimizes and maybe even incentivizes people to take this path to building wealth, a path that used to be secondary to property.
That makes a lot of sense. And, for our listeners who like to know about the data quality.
Ah, yes, the methodology, always important.
Right. Gallup Korea mentions it was done via telephone interviews. They used CTI, that's computer-assisted telephone interviewing,
Standard practice.
using randomly drawn virtual mobile numbers, which helps get a good representative sample. The sample size was 1,000 people across the country.
Solid size.
Response rate was 12.8%, which is fairly typical for these kinds of surveys. And the margin of error is plus or minus 3.1 percentage points at the 95% confidence level.
So statistically speaking, it's a pretty reliable snapshot of public opinion right now.
Exactly. So let's try and wrap this up. The core idea, the big takeaway here.
Yeah.
We're seeing this, monumental shift in South Korea. And it happened fast. A really decisive move away from the traditional safety of real estate towards the stock market.
Driven by a mix of things, it seems, market factors, maybe changing generational views, and definitely a push from government policy.
So for you listening, what does this specific story tell us more broadly?
Well, I think it's a crucial insight into just how quickly things can change in global economics and investment psychology.
Right. How fluid preferences can be.
Exactly. Investment preferences, even ones that seem deeply ingrained, can pivot incredibly fast when the economic landscape shifts or when policy nudges things along.
It's not just a Korean story then.
Not at all. It's about understanding that fluidity, that dynamic interplay between markets, policy, and individual choices everywhere. It shows how adaptable or maybe how reactive investors can be.
It definitely leaves you with something to think about. If a preference as strong as the one for real estate in Korea, with all its history, can shift so dramatically in just 2 years, what does that suggest about investment trends elsewhere?
That's the provocative thought, isn't it? How stable are any long-held investment beliefs in other parts of the world?
Yeah. And how might this kind of rapid change influence long-term financial planning for individuals and maybe even institutions globally, especially as economies keep evolving?
It certainly gives us plenty of food for thought about the future.
Welcome to The Deep Dive, your shortcut to being well-informed. Today, we are plunging into the really dynamic world of semiconductors. Specifically, we're looking at some fascinating and honestly often contrasting investment strategies around two of South Korea's giants, Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix. We're going to unpack insights from a recent article detailing these chip wars, foreign versus domestic investment trends. It really highlights how different players seem to be betting on completely different horses here.
Exactly. And our mission, really, for this deep dive is to cut through some of that noise. We want to understand the why behind these divergent paths, what's actually driving investor sentiment, and, crucially, what are the top analysts forecasting. What's really quite insightful about the source material we have is just how clearly it lays out these contrasting views. It gives us a unique lens, I think, to understand these market movements.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. We're looking at Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix. I mean, these are absolute titans in the global chip industry. But their recent stock performance and, the investor interest in them have gone in wildly different directions just this month. It's kind of like watching two ships sailing opposite ways. And when you look at who's steering those ships, foreign versus individual investors, that's where the story really gets interesting.
Absolutely. The core divergence is striking, almost a mirror image, really. You've got foreign investors heavily buying Samsung,
while individual investors are flocking to SK Hynix. It's a really clear split depending on the investor type.
Yeah, what really jumped out at me from the data was just the scale of the foreign money going into Samsung. I mean, foreign investors have been on a massive buying spree. The numbers are pretty staggering. So they net purchased 1.877 trillion Korean won of Samsung Electronics just up to July 18th. That's more than double their total net purchases for the entire previous month. That was, 713 billion KRW?
Yeah.
And this buying was so intense that foreign ownership in Samsung actually climbed back to 50.19% on July 18th. That's the first time it crossed that 50% mark since way back in April. That's a huge reversal.
Right. And if we try to connect that to the bigger picture, our source mentions a couple of key factors that... First, there's this clear expectation that Samsung is going to benefit from the U.S. government lifting export regulations on NVIDIA's H20 AI chips to China. Samsung was known to supply memory for the H20, so this looks like a direct positive for them.
Okay.
Second, and this is also significant, the resolution of Samsung's sort of judicial risk. Specifically, Chairman Lee Jae-young's confirmed acquittal on those unfair merger and accounting fraud charges. That definitely seems to have removed a big cloud of uncertainty hanging over the company.
Right, that makes sense. So while Samsung was riding this wave of foreign confidence, what was happening over at SK Hynix? Because it's a totally different picture for them with foreign investors, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been pulling back.
Significantly, it looks like.
Indeed. Foreigners actually net sold 301 billion KRW of SK Hynix this month, up to the 18th. And this is quite a sharp reversal, remember. They were net buyers in May and June. So something definitely shifted their sentiment.
Which naturally makes you ask, what caused that shift? What happened?
Well, the source points pretty directly to one key event. The global investment bank, Goldman Sachs, downgraded SK Hynix. They changed their investment opinion to neutral.
Ah, okay.
And the reasoning cited concerns that increased market competition could lead to a fall in high-bandwidth memory HBM prices next year. That downgrade seems to have really triggered significant sell-offs, especially after SK Hynix's stock price had briefly shot past 300,000 KRW on July 11th. Maybe hit a peak some felt was unsustainable.
Right, profit-taking maybe after the downgrade.
Possibly, yeah. A combination of factors.
So if we just look at the immediate impact on the stock prices from these foreign moves, it's pretty stark. Samsung Electronics stock price went up by 12.2% this month. Meanwhile, SK Hynix's fell by 7.9%. Really paints that picture of diverging paths.
Very clearly.
Okay, now let's flip the coin and look at the individual investors because they're doing almost the exact opposite, aren't they? They've been net selling Samsung and significantly net buying SK Hynix.
Yeah.
The numbers show individual investors net purchased 1.233 trillion KRW of SK Hynix this month, again up to the 18th. And conversely, they net sold a huge 2.315 trillion KRW of Samsung Electronics in that same period. Like you said, it's like a mirror image.
It really is. And what's particularly striking here, I think, is the surge in what's called debt-backed investment, or BID2 in Korea, specifically for SK Hynix among these individual investors.
Meaning they're borrowing money to buy the stock.
Exactly. Leveraging up. The credit balance for SK Hynix just surged by 30%, reaching 395.1 billion KRW by July 17th. That's up from about 305 billion just at the end of last month.
Wow, a 30% jump in borrowing for one stock.
Yeah. And contrast that with Samsung Electronics, its credit balance actually decreased by 2% over the same period. Went from 834 billion down to about 814 billion KRW.
So individuals are essentially saying, we'll take on debt to bet on SK Hynix rebounding. That shows some serious conviction, or maybe hope. Why this stock? Why are they so drawn to SK Hynix, even borrowing money for it, when the big foreign players are getting cautious?
Well, the interpretation seems to be that these individual investors are looking at the recent drop, the adjustment in SK Hynix's stock price, not as a red flag, but as a prime buying opportunity, a dip to buy into.
Okay.
They seem to be betting strongly on a future rebound, focusing maybe on its long-term potential in AI memory, despite the current volatility and those concerns raised by institutions like Goldman Sachs.
A classic contrarian play then, but, with leverage thrown in.
Precisely. It adds another layer of risk, obviously.
So, okay, that's what investors are doing. But when you look ahead, trying to figure out what's next, especially for SK Hynix, it seems even the experts, the analysts, are really split on the outlook. It's not a clear picture at all.
No, it's not. And this is where it gets genuinely fascinating because it really shows how different analysts can look at the same signals, the same data, and come to, well, quite different conclusions. So on one side, you have a more, let's say, bearish view. Kim Guang-Jin from Hanwha Investment and Securities represents this well. His argument is essentially that there's potential for SK Hynix's stock price to adjust further downwards, maybe even revisit the lows we saw last September.
Okay, why does he think that?
His reasoning focuses on competition in the HBM market. He argues that while SK Hynix had, almost a monopoly in the early days of the 5th gen HBM, that's HBM3E, the next generation HBM4 coming next year is likely to see much tougher competition. New players jumping in, the tech gap narrowing. Basically, he thinks that near monopoly advantage SK Hynix enjoyed won't last in the HBM4 era.
Okay, so increased competition eroding their edge. That's the bearish case. What about the other side?
Right. Then you have a significantly more bullish take from Cha Young-ho at LS Securities. He sees things quite differently. He predicts that the average selling price, the ASP for HBM next year, will only decline by maybe about 5%, much less than the market seems to be worrying about.
Only 5%. That's way less than some fears.
Exactly. And he believes the risk of oversupply isn't actually that significant, even with Samsung really pushing into the market, and even if you exclude demand for those China-bound AI chips. Now, he does acknowledge that SK Hynix's sort of premium valuation compared to Samsung might shrink a bit, but interestingly, he frames this more as a re-rating, like an upward reevaluation for Samsung, rather than a fundamental cut in SK Hynix's own valuation.
I see. So it's Samsung catching up, not necessarily SK Hynix falling back in intrinsic value.
That seems to be his perspective, yes. And his recommendation is pretty firm. He says the market's concerns right now are excessive. He actually suggests using this current dip in SK Hynix's stock as a buying opportunity.
Wow, completely opposite conclusions from the same basic situation.
Pretty much. It really highlights the uncertainty.
So wrapping this up, what does all this mean for you? Someone maybe tracking the semiconductor space or just trying to stay informed. What we've really laid out here is a market defined by these stark contrasts. You've got foreign investors piling into Samsung, individual investors, some using debt, going all in on SK Hynix. And then you have the experts themselves deeply divided, especially about the future of this critical HBM technology. It's not just a story of two stocks, is it? It's more like a real-time case study in how different risk appetites, different timelines, different interpretations lead players to bet on completely different outcomes.
Absolutely. This deep dive, I think, really underscores that dynamic interplay you see between, micro-level corporate events like an acquittal or a specific product demand shift and the macro-level market sentiment, which gets pushed around by everything from geopolitical moves to analyst downgrades.
It clearly shows how different people interpret the exact same information and how things like regulations, legal outcomes, and predictions about future tech all kind of swirl together to shape where the money flows. So yeah, even among the pros, the future of HBM is definitely not settled. It shows that in tech, especially fast-moving tech, conviction often boils down to your basic assumptions about competition and who's going to innovate faster.
That's a great point. Which leaves us with maybe a final thought for you to chew on. As this whole semiconductor landscape keeps evolving, especially with AI driving so much change in chips and memory, how might this shifting balance, between market competition on one side and pure technological breakthroughs on the other, how might that actually redefine what value even means for these chip giants in the years ahead? Something to think about. An umbrella in the sun. For a lot of us, especially here in the West, that probably sounded a bit strange not too long ago. Maybe even something to scoff at. But fast forward to today, and we're seeing this really fascinating and fast global spread of parasol culture. It's happening right here in the U.S., where, frankly, it used to be seen mostly as an Asian practice.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to really dig into some recent reporting. We want to unpack why this is happening now, what it means for our health, and how perceptions are just shifting incredibly quickly.
And what's really striking, I think, is how fast something that was seen as, let's say, niche, or maybe just cosmetic, how quickly that can pivot and become, a global health trend when things change. It's almost like there's this collective moment where people are thinking, maybe the Koreans were right all along, that kind of feeling.
It's amazing how context just changes everything, isn't it? I mean, historically, the view in the West when looking at parasol use in Asia often just boiled it down to beauty, like a simple vanity thing.
Pretty much, yeah. Keeping skin fair was the main assumption.
Exactly. But now, like you said, there's this huge reevaluation happening.
Yeah.
And it seems largely driven by these, frankly, terrifying record heat waves we're seeing everywhere.
Absolutely. That's a huge catalyst.
So beyond just, staying cool, what does this shift tell us about how ideas move around?
Well, it says a lot about how adaptable we are, I think, and maybe how we're revalidating some traditional knowledge. Westerners are definitely coming at parasols now from a health angle, health protection, plain and simple.
Okay.
And the big reason, the core reason for this shift, you've got dermatologists globally really emphasizing now with scientific backing that parasols work. They're effective. They help prevent skin cancer. They help prevent premature aging.
Wow.
That's powerful stuff that kind of bridges that old cultural perception gap.
Yeah, having doctors weigh in like that, it changes the game.
Mhm.
So, okay, with that kind of backing, how is this actually showing up? Like in everyday life here in the U.S., are we seeing it on the streets, online?
Oh, definitely. We're seeing real concrete evidence. For instance, the New York Post ran a piece, I think it was July 19th, basically calling UV blocking parasols the latest trend.
Huh.
And social media, it's blown up. If you spend any time there, you've likely seen it. Tons more videos, posts, you name it, across U.S. platforms showing people how to use parasols, what they do. And the numbers back it up. Get this. On TikTok, hashtags related to parasols. Views are up over 300% compared to last year.
300%. What?
Yeah. And it's translating to sales, too. E-commerce is booming. Places like Amazon are seeing really big jumps in sales for UV-blocking parasols. And people are specifically looking for that high UPF rating.
UPF?
Right, ultraviolet protection factor. They want the 50-plus spread. That seems to be the standard people are grabbing onto.
That kind of surge, that 300%, the sales jump, it really highlights how urgent people feel this is, doesn't it?
It really does.
So this must be hitting the market pretty hard. How are companies responding?
You're absolutely right. The market's moving fast. Your traditional umbrella makers, they're now heavily investing in developing products specifically with better UV blocking. They see the demand.
Makes sense.
But it's not just them. What's also interesting is fashion brands are getting in on it. They're positioning parasols as a new kind of accessory, stylish and practical.
Fashion meeting function?
Exactly. And the projections, they're pretty significant. The U.S. parasol market just this year is expected to grow over 40% compared to last year.
40% growth in 1 year. That's staggering.
It is. It shows a major shift.
Okay, so it sounds like a really useful tool, this UV parasol. But is it enough on its own? Like, is a parasol the magic bullet for sun protection? What are the experts saying?
Yeah, that's a really crucial point, and the experts are clear on this. They strongly, strongly recommend using parasols with other things.
Okay.
So you still need your sunscreen. You still benefit from UV protective clothing. The reason is, well, a parasol is great for direct sun, but it can't completely block the indirect UV rays.
Indirect, like bouncing off stuff.
Exactly. Think about light bouncing off the pavement or water, sand, even buildings. That reflected UV still gets you. So you need that extra layer, that sunscreen, that clothing.
Right, that makes sense. A combined approach.
Precisely. And another piece of advice you hear consistently from dermatologists and health experts is, regardless of your protection, try to limit being outdoors during peak sun hours. Roughly 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. if you can.
Got it. Still the classic advice there.
Still holds true.
Okay, so let's sort of pull this together. We've looked at how this item, once seen as very culturally specific, maybe even just for vanity, has gone global incredibly fast. It's transformed from that simple beauty accessory into really a vital health tool.
Yeah.
And it's all being pushed by these major shifts in our environment, like the intense heat. It's quite a story of adaptation.
It really is. And what's fascinating to me is just how quickly those cultural ideas can change when the need arises. And maybe more importantly, how adaptable we actually are. We find solutions, right? Sometimes by looking back at things we might have overlooked before.
Yeah, rediscovering old wisdom almost.
Kind of, yeah.
So maybe thinking about all this leaves you wondering, what other everyday things, items that we currently overlook, or maybe see as tied to just one culture? What else might become a global necessity as our world keeps changing?